for mothers. And I have chosen Samson. Now, some of you are like, Samson? Here's this. So growing up, the Bible stories I remember most from my mom, it's two of them. I remember we had one of those like picture Bibles that wasn't really a Bible. It was just a storybook with lots of pictures. And for some reason, I just remember Samson being in that book. And then I remember one time my mom was teaching my Sunday school class. She was not my normal Sunday school teacher. Actually, what my mom did, we went to a little bitty church, Grace Evangelical Free Church, about 30 on a good day. And she was the piano player, and she played by ear, not literally, but. And so sometimes she would write little songs, and she would teach us, like, she wrote this song. Well, she didn't write the words. Jesus wrote the words, but she put it to music, Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. And then she sang, shine, 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 shine for Jesus, shine, shine, shine. And I was like, that's my mama. She's writing songs. And I remember, and this is a lesson, don't be critical, because I remember she sang that at church for the Sunday school, and the pastor's wife was like, oh, I don't remember all those shines being in the Gospel of Matthew. And I'm like, well, read closer, lady. They're there. And my mom was crushed. She just was like, oh. And so be nice. But anyway, that was my mom. She wasn't the Sunday school teacher. She was the piano player. But I remember this one week, she must have been filling in, and there were like three of us. And I remember the building. It was like a city hall. We were in Lancaster, Wisconsin. The city hall is about the size of like this chair. There you go. That's the city hall. And primarily, apparently, the building, and I didn't know what AA was, because, I'm like 7. But apparently, that was the primary purpose for the building, because what I really remember about the building is coffee everywhere, cigarette butts everywhere, and those little plastic cups that you put a paper liner inside, and that was my church. And I remember we're sitting at a table, and my mom is teaching me and two of my friends about Samson, and she's drawing pictures of Samson, because my mom was a pretty good drawer, and she's like, I think he had lots of muscles, because he did all of these things. And so for some reason, Samson and my mother are like linked. So when I think of Bible stories, Samson has a very special place in my heart. And I was raised to think he was a hero of the Bible. And then I remember kind of first learning that other people didn't see him as a hero. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's Samson. Like, Samson. And they're like, well, And I remember reading an article. A guy was talking about Samson, and he was calling him a womanizer. In defense of Samson, in the book of Judges, we read about 3 women that Samson had interest in. 3. I don't know how many women it takes to be a womanizer, but I'm not sure 3 qualifies. That means like you have a 7th grade girlfriend, you have a high school girlfriend, and you go out with a girl in college, you womanizer. And I remember this guy was like, well, Samson's black book would have been thick as the phone book, and they're just kind of picking on him. And it's what we do. I'm going to defend the guy who's attacking Samson, even though I'm attacking him, because what human beings do is judge and put down and criticize. I remember when I would first start preaching, I would just pray Samson's prayer, when he says, oh, sovereign Lord, remember me one more time. And I thought, if it's good enough for Samson, And I remember sharing this with one of my former pastors, and he was like, oh, yeah, I guess if Samson's your spiritual role model. And I'm like, he's Samson. Why? I didn't realize how much a lot of people kind of criticize and put down Samson. And is it true he did not live up to his potential? Yes. Is it true he made some bad life choices? Yes. Is it true he disregarded God's commands quite often? Yes. Have any of you failed to live up to your potential, or made bad life choices, or not followed God's commands all the way? And you know, if this is what it takes for us just to be like, so here's my proof. How many of you, oh no, not how many. How many, well, okay, how many? How many of you are familiar with Hebrews chapter 11, what some people have called the hall of faith, where it says, you know, without faith it is impossible to please God because you must believe that he exists. And then it mentions what this guy did by faith and what this guy did. Does anybody just want to guess how many people are mentioned by name in Judges 16? Judges 16. Hebrews 11. Okay. If you guys can read my mind, you know what I just did. There are 16 named. See, I was like all Judges 16 names together. 16 people are mentioned by name as heroes of the faith in the Old Testament. And Samson is one of them. And I think if your name gets put in that list, you are due some respect. Not because you are perfect, but because by faith. And so, mothers, this story is a little bit crazy. Now, part of it is it's a different culture. I mean, we don't solve our disputes nowadays by just going out and killing each other. But when they're conquering the promised land, you defeated your enemies, and primarily you defeated your enemies by killing them. And I know that's harsh. I've heard comparison between General Lee and General Grant. And General Lee, he loved battle. He loved the military. He loved the troops being lined up. And he said, he was quoted one time as saying, "It's a good thing war is so awful, lest we grow to love it too much." Because there was something beautiful in it for him. General Grant, he didn't feel that way. He said, war is killing, period. And the one who kills the most wins. That's the world that Samson lived in. Chapter 6, no, I got all my 16s and 13s and 12s. So we're going to begin in chapter 13. And it says, "And the people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord," because this was the cycle in the book of Judges. They would get rescued by God and everything was good for a while, and then they would forget about him. And I remember on 9/11, when it seems like the whole country is praying, and there were prayer meetings and worship services and town hall gatherings, and people were like, America's turning back to God. And that lasted about 3 months, maybe, and we forget. And this is what the Israelites did. So the people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. So the Lord gave them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. That's a long time. And there was a certain man of Zorah, of the tribe of the Danites, whose name was Manoah. And his wife was barren and had no children. And again, more and more women are choosing not to have children, and it's okay. But in this culture, that not having children was painful. That was first of all how wives were taken care of, because when their husbands died, they had to have a family to take care of them. They didn't have Social Security and jobs like we do today. She was barren, and the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, "Behold, you are barren and have not borne children." And I'm thinking at that point, she's like, "Thanks for reminding me. Like the greatest source of pain in my life, and you just pointed out to me." But then he says this, "But you shall conceive and bear a son." And this is great news. And then he says, "Therefore, be careful and drink no wine or strong drink, and eat nothing unclean. For behold, you shall conceive and bear a son, and no razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazirite to God from the womb." Now, a Nazirite we read about in Numbers chapter 6. They were people who took a vow to give themselves wholly to God for a period of time. and they were not to eat anything unclean, and that was for all of Israel, to follow the Israelite food laws. But the Nazarites specifically were not to have any fruit of the vine, no grapes, no raisins, no wine, no strong drinks. They were set apart to God. They were not to cut their hair the entire time of their Nazarite vow. Well, God is telling her he's going to be a Nazarite from the womb, and he shall begin to save Israel from the hand of the Philistines. Now she finds out, what? Like, he's not just going to be any old son. He's going to be the deliverer of the Israelites. This is a lot of responsibility to raise this boy. And then the woman came and told her husband, a man of God came to me, and his appearance was like the appearance of the angel of God. Very awesome. I did not ask him where he was from, and he did not tell me his name. But he said to me, behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. So then drink no wine or strong drink, and eat nothing unclean. For the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb to the day of his death. Like, he's a Nazarite from the womb to death. And then Manoah, this is a lot of responsibility for him. Finding out he's going to be a dad. I mean, finding out you're going to be a dad, at least for me, was overwhelming. I'm like, well, that's a lot of responsibility I wasn't necessarily thinking I was ready for. Like, I have to make sure there's a place to live, and there's food, and there's clothing, and I have to learn how to teach them and to grow up, and I have to comfort them, and I have to discipline them, and I have to bring them up to know God. And oh man, this got real quick. So Manoah prays, "O Lord, please let the man of God whom you sent come again to us and teach us what we are to do with this child who will be born. Like, help me out." Michael Card wrote a song called Joseph's Song, and it's written from the perspective of Joseph, the earthly father of Jesus. And in this song, he says, "How can it be, this baby in my arms, resting now so peacefully? The Son of God?" The angel said, "How can it be? Lord, for all my life, I've been a simple carpenter. How can a man be father to the Son of God? Father, show me where I fit into this plan of yours. How can I raise a king? How can I raise a king?" Well, Samson's dad wasn't raising a king, but he was raising a Nazarite set apart from God to grow up to be a deliverer of Israel. How do I do that? So they ask again, and God listened to the voice of Manoah, and the angel of God came again to the woman as she sat in the field, but Manoah, her husband, was not with her. So the woman ran quickly and told her husband, "Behold, the man who came to me the other day has appeared to me." And Manoah arose and went after his wife and came to the man and said to him, "Are you the man who spoke to this woman?" And he said, "I am." And Manoah said, "Now, when your words come true," and he didn't say, "How will we know the words will come true?" He said, "The words will come true. When your words come true, what is to be the child's manner of life? And what is his mission? Like, how do we raise him up? What do we do?" And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, "Of all that I said to the woman, let her be careful." And then he repeats it. "She may not eat anything that comes from the vine, neither let her drink wine or strong drink or eat any unclean thing. All that I commanded her, let her observe." So again, he goes over the food laws because she is going to be giving birth to a Nazarite. The food laws matter to God. Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, "Please let us detain you and prepare a young goat for you." And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, "If you detain me, I will not eat of your food. But if you prepare a burnt offering, then offer it to the Lord." For Manoah did not know that he was the angel of the Lord. Now, in the Old Testament, almost all the time, when you read about the angel of the Lord, it is God himself. And you know this because when he speaks, he doesn't say, "The Lord has given me a message." He just tells you, first person. And Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, "What is your name, so that when your words come true, we may honor you?" And the angel of the Lord said to him, why do you ask my name, seeing it is wonderful? So Manoah took the young goat with the grain offering and offered it on the rock to the Lord, to the one who works wonders. And Manoah and his wife were watching. And when the flame went up toward heaven from the altar, the angel of the Lord went up in the flame of the altar. And at that point, they're like, oh yeah, no, that wasn't just a guy, was he? Wow. Now Manoah and his wife were watching, and they fell on their faces to the ground. The angel of the Lord appeared no more to Manoah and to his wife. And then Manoah knew that he was the angel of the Lord. And Manoah said to his wife, we shall surely die, for we have seen God. Because he knew you can't see God. God told Moses couldn't see God. And if Moses can't see God, I'm pretty sure the Danite tribe Manoah can't see God. We're going to die. But his wife, very practical, very wise. If the Lord had meant to kill us, he would not have accepted a burnt offering and a grain offering at our hands. If what God's purpose was just to put us to death, he wouldn't have gone through all this. He wouldn't have shown us all these things or now announced to us such things as these. And the woman bore a son and called his name Samson. And the young man grew, and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him in Manahadan between Zorah and Eshtaol. And we aren't told more about his childhood, but I promise you, based on this text and the story, they taught him right. And they taught him who he was. How do you not? How do you, when all of the other kids are eating grapes and your kid can't, how do you explain that? Well, you have to say, here's why, Samson. Remember I told you about the angel of the Lord who came? And he's like, you should tell me again. And so she tells him the story. I was there, and the angel of the Lord came, and I didn't have any babies. And then he said, you're going to have a son. And he's going to be devoted to God. He's going to be a Nazarite. And he can't eat this, and he can't eat this, and he can't eat this, and he can never cut his hair. And he's going to grow up, and he's going to rescue Israel from the Philistines. And I'm sure Samson's like, that's a good story. Tell me that one again. I mean, how else do you explain to him? It's like, Mom, how come all the other kids have haircuts and I don't ever get one? It's like, Samson, we don't have enough money. You cut it yourself, Mom. You know, I'm sure that they taught Samson these things, that he knew the story of his birth, that he understood who he was and what he was to be. And here the Spirit of the Lord comes on him. And I don't know if he understood it, but I'm sure he figured something is going on here. And then we get to chapter 14. And Samson went down to Timnah. And at Timnah, he saw one of the daughters of the Philistines. And you're like, well, that doesn't sound good. Like the Philistines, weren't they the enemies of God? Weren't they the idol worshipers who celebrated Dagon that we read about? Like, yeah, that's who they are. That's who they are. And the first real choice that Samson makes in his story as we read it is to go after a Philistine girl. Now, women, and I don't think it's your fault, but you can be problems. Like, no, you can. I don't know if I told you this, but on Wednesday nights I have a little youth group, and the youngest kid is 5th grade, and the oldest one is like 14 or 15 or something. And we were going over the parable of the sower, and it talks about, and some seed lands on the thorny soil, and it takes root and it grows, but then the thorns choke it out. And I said, what are some things that can choke out God's word in our life? And one of the boys, he's 12, he's just sitting there like this, women. I'm like, women? You're 12. Like, they're not even women yet. They're like girls. Women. Well, here's Samson. He sees this Philistine girl. And then he came up and he told his father and his mother, I saw one of the daughters of the Philistines at Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife. But his father and mother said to him, is there not a woman among the daughters of your relatives? Like, are you kidding us? all that time of telling you who you are, and no grapes and no haircuts and no unclean. And this, what? Like Samson, remember all the times that God said in his law, don't have your daughters marry their sons, or their sons marry your daughters, or their hearts will be led astray. You can't find, there's not one girl in all of Israel that is acceptable to you. But Samson said to his father, get her for me. She is right in my eyes. I don't care about anyone else's eyes. In my eyes, she's right. And his father and mother did not know that it was from the Lord, for he was seeking an opportunity against the Philistines. At that time, the Philistines ruled over Israel. So, Samson goes down with his father and mother to meet this girl, because so far he's just seen her. And as he's going down to Timnah, they're by a vineyard, and a young lion comes running out at him. And Samson grabs the lion and rips it apart, just like it was a little goat, because the Spirit of the Lord was on him. And he meets the girl, and he chats with her, and apparently he likes her, and they go back home, and then he's like, it's time to get married. So he's going down again to Timnah with his father and mother. And he sneaks off because he wants to see the lion carcass that he killed. Just see what's going on. And he gets over there, and he finds out bees have made honeycomb. And there's a whole bunch of honey in this dead lion. And so Samson scoops out the honeycomb, never minding that as a Nazirite, he's not to touch a dead body. And food in a dead body is unclean food. But he just grabs it, and he's like, this is good. I better give some to my mom and my dad. He doesn't tell them where it came from. I'm pretty sure they would be horrified if they knew. They'd be like, Samson, how many rules? Like God said. They get down to Timnah, and because he's not from Timnah, and destination weddings weren't a thing yet, the Philistines give him 30 companions to be his wedding party. And so Samson's a fairly clever guy. He seems to be creative because we hear that he writes a riddle, and he also later writes poetry. And most men don't write riddles or poetry. And if they do write riddles, they're really bad. Like, where's the best place to hide your French fries? Under the dock. Like, why under the dock? Have you ever looked for French fries under the dock? It's a bad riddle, okay? It's a bad riddle. True story. A 5-year-old kid made that joke up and told it to me. And I was like, you got me there. I have never once said, I'm going to look under the dock for some French fries. It is the best place to hide them. So, Samson is clever. He writes riddles. He writes poetry. He gets down there. He's with his 30 men. They got a week to kill. He's like, I'll tell you a riddle, and if you can solve it, I will give each of you 30 a brand new set of clothing. But if you can't solve it, you give me a set of clothing. They're like, okay, what's your riddle? He says, out of the strong, something sweet, and out of the eater, something to eat. And day 1 goes by, and day 2 goes by, and day 3 goes by, and they can't figure it out. On day 4, they go to this Philistine girl, and they say, did you bring us here just to rob us of our possessions? You get the answer out of him, and you tell us, or we will burn you and your father to death. It's extreme time. And so she's like, Samson, you don't really love me. You say that you love me, but you don't love me because you haven't told me the answer to your riddle. And she cries and cries and cries and asks and asks. And he's like, I haven't even told my own mother or father. And finally, he gives in and he says, okay, fine. What is stronger than a lion? And what is sweeter than honey? And she goes and she tells the Philistines. And on the 7th day, before sunset, they said, we know the answer. And he said, what is it? Well, what is stronger than a lion? And what is sweeter than honey? And he says, because he's very romantic, if you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle. Yes, very romantic. And then he goes down to Ashkelon, and the Spirit of the Lord comes on him, and he kills 30 Philistines, and he takes their clothes, and he brings them back, and he says, there you go, have them. And he storms off to his father's house. Well, his future father-in-law does the only reasonable thing, we have everyone here. We already having a big party. Next man up. So he picks one of the 30 companions, and he says, you marry my daughter. So she's married now. Samson didn't know that. He thought he was marrying the girl. So chapter 15 begins, and it's the time of wheat harvest, and Samson's going to go see his wife. So he takes a young goat, because that's the appropriate wedding gift. And he gets to the house, and he says, I'm here to see my wife. And his father's like, I thought you hated her. I gave her away to one of the companions at your wedding. But look at her younger sister. Isn't she even more attractive? Why don't you marry her instead? And Samson is like, now I'm not going to be responsible for what I do to you Philistines. And he goes out and he catches 300 foxes. And he ties the foxes together by their tails, and he puts a torch in the middle, and he lets them run free. And they run through the grain fields where all the wheat has been harvested, and they burn it to the ground, and they burn the olive groves, and they burn the vineyards. And now the Philistines are really angry. And they say, who's responsible for this? And their answer is Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite. And so they go to this girl's house, and they kill her and her father, burning them to death with the household. And now Samson is really upset. And he's like, why did you do that? Well, now I'm not going to be responsible. And he just goes on a killing spree, and he kills a bunch of Philistines. And then he gets tuckered out, or something happens, because he decides to go back to the land of Judah, and he's hiding in a cave. And the Philistines get a whole army of men, and they go over to Judah. And the men of Judah are like, why are you coming after us? And they're like, we don't want you, we just want Samson. Hand him over to us. And so 3,000 men of Judah, apparently they don't know that Samson is the judge who's going to rescue them. 3,000 men of Judah go down to the cave, and they say, Samson, why are you causing all this trouble? And he says, hey, promise you won't kill me yourselves. If you're just going to hand me over, I'll go with you. So they tie up Samson, they take him to the Philistines, and he snaps the ropes just like nothing. And he sees the fresh jawbone of a donkey. And he grabs the jawbone of the donkey, and he starts just killing them. And he kills 1,000 of them. And then he writes his poem. With a donkey's jawbone, I have made donkeys of them. With a donkey's jawbone, I have killed 1,000 men. And he is so thirsty. Because apparently killing 1,000 guys with a jawbone can do that to you. And he's like, God, you've given me this great victory, but now I'm going to die because there's nothing to drink. And God opens up a hollow spot, and water comes out. And Samson was the judge of Israel for 20 years. And then we get to chapter 16, and it begins. Now Samson went down to Gaza, to a prostitute there. And the men from the town, the Philistines, they came out, and they were like, in the morning, we'll take him. But Samson got up in the middle of the night, and he goes out to the entrance of the city, and he rips up the city gates, and it's bars. And he carries the city gates to the hill across from Hebron. Now, we don't actually know if he carried it all the way to the hill or if the hill was, but Hebron was 38 miles away. That's a pretty impressive feat. I mean, most guys can't even rip the gates of the city out, let alone carry them. And then he goes down to the valley of Sorek, and he meets a woman named Delilah, and he falls in love with her. And I've often thought, if she had been a good foreign woman like Ruth or Rahab, the story of Samson could be entirely different. But Delilah wasn't. And the men of the Philistine country, their rulers, came to her and they said, hey, if you will hand Samson into our hands, we will give you, each of us will give you 1,100 pieces of silver. And she's like, And so she starts, Samson, you don't really love me. Why do you say that? Because you won't tell me how come you're so strong. What's the secret of your strength? Please tell me. And she plies him and she plies him. And finally he's like, okay, if I was tied up with 7 fresh bowstrings, I'll be as weak as any other man. And he goes to sleep. And somehow, during the night, he's tied up with 7 fresh bowstrings. And then she says, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. And he wakes up and he snaps them like nothing and he thrashes the Philistines. Samson, you lied to me. You don't really love me. You would have told me. And he's like, okay. If I'm tied up with new ropes that have never been used, then I'll be as weak. Somehow that happens. Samson, the Philistines are upon you. Snap, thrash, he's free. Samson, you lied to me again. How can you say you love me? He gets closer to the truth. He says, okay, the 7 braids of my hair, if they are woven with a loom and a pin run through them, then I'll be as weak as any other man. Again, somehow that happens. Samson, the Philistines are upon you. And she's like, that's it. You've lied to me, and you've lied to me, and you've made me look like a fool. You really don't care about me, do you, Samson? You prove it every day. Okay. Here's the truth. I have been a Nazirite of God, set apart from the womb, and my hair has never been cut in my life. And if my hair is cut, I will be as weak as any other man. And she puts him to sleep in her lap, and she calls in the man with the razor, and off goes his hair. And then the Philistines are there, and she says, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. And he wakes up, but he does not know that the Lord has left him. And he thinks he will get out of it, just like every other time. But this time there is no super strength. And they seized him, and they gouged out his eyes, and they brought him down to Gaza, and they bound him with bronze shackles, and he ground at the mill in the prison. They basically turned him into a donkey, just pushing and grinding, pushing and grinding. And I wonder what things he thought. And I wonder what memories he had. And I wonder what decisions he wished he could undecide. And then the most beautiful verse in the whole story comes up. But the hair of his head began to grow again. And I wonder what that was like the day he reached up and he's like, and even though he had broke faith with God, God was faithful to him. And the hair of his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. And now the lords of the Philistines gathered to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon, their god, and to rejoice. And they said, our God has given Samson, our enemy, into our hand. And when the people saw him, they praised their God, for they said, our God has given our enemy into our hand, the ravager of our country, who has killed many of us. And when their hearts were merry, they said, call Samson that he may entertain us. And you say, well, how is a blind man going to entertain them? That's exactly how. It's like, yeah, you who are so strong, what do you see now? You're not so much, are you? Just shackled up, grinding grain, big, tough Samson, killing all the men, writing all the riddles. And they made him stand between the pillars. And Samson said to the young man who held him by the hand, let me feel the pillars on which the house rests, that I may lean against them. Now the house was full of men and women. All the lords of the Philistines were there. And on the roof there were about 3,000 men and women. 3,000 men and women on the roof. Just on the roof. And they looked on while Samson entertained. And then Samson called to the Lord and said, O Lord God, please remember me. Strengthen me only this once, O God, that I may be avenged on the Philistines for my 2 eyes. And Samson grasped the 2 middle pillars on which the house rested, and he leaned his weight against them, his right hand on the one and his left on the other. And Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." And then he bowed with all his strength, and the house fell upon the lords and upon all the people who were in it. So the dead whom he killed at his death were more than those whom he had killed during his life. And some of you may say, why did you choose this for Mother's Day? Because in the end, when literally push came to shove, Samson remembered. And he knew who he was. And the things that his mother taught him held true. And he prayed, "God, remember me one more time. Strengthen me just once more." So moms, don't give up and don't quit, and keep teaching and keep praying and keep sharing and keep teaching and keep praying and keep sharing and keep loving and loving and loving and loving and loving. Let's pray. Father, thank you that your grace is so big. Thank you that this man that had some issues, he is a hero of the faith. He's a hero because by faith, he destroyed the enemy. He fought battles. He rescued Israel. Thank you that you did not give up on him. And thank you that you don't give up on us. So Jesus, in your name, for your kingdom and your glory, we pray.